The gym air hung thick with sweat and the smell of old leather. Muhammad Ali, a whirlwind of speed and power just moments before, now stood still, his chest heaving, a towel draped over his head. The training session had been brutal, pushing him to his limits as always. Beside him, Angelo Dundee, his coach, a man with tired eyes but an unwavering gaze, offered a quiet word of advice, then began packing up their gear. Ali watched him, a familiar curiosity stirring. Dundee was a constant presence, a steady hand in the chaos of Ali's life, but always a private man. Today, something was different. Ali felt a pull, an urge to see beyond the gym, beyond the ring. Without a word, Ali slipped out, pulling his jacket tighter against the cool Miami evening. He saw Dundee's beat-up car pull out of the parking lot, and Ali, in his own, less conspicuous vehicle, followed. He kept a respectful distance, not wanting to be seen, just wanting to observe. He'd never done this before, never felt the need to. But tonight, after a particularly intense session, the quiet strength of his coach had resonated differently. Dundee drove through familiar streets, past brightly lit diners and quiet residential areas, eventually pulling into the driveway of a small, unassuming house. It was modest, like Dundee himself. Ali parked down the street, keeping the house in sight. He watched Dundee get out, a worn briefcase in one hand, and disappear inside. A few minutes later, a soft glow appeared in one of the windows. Ali, driven by an impulse he couldn't quite name, got out of his car and walked silently, careful not to make a sound, towards the house. He crept up to the side window, partially obscured by a bush, and peered inside. What he saw stopped him cold. Angelo Dundee, the calm, tactical genius who stood in his corner through every fight, was on his knees, not in a training stance, not strategizing a punch, but kneeling on a simple rug in a sparsely furnished living room. His head was bowed, his hands clasped together. Ali strained to hear, and a soft, raw whisper reached his ears. Dundee was praying. He wasn't praying for victory in the next fight, or for Ali's fame, or for any personal gain. He was praying for his family, his voice thick with emotion as he spoke names Ali didn't recognize. Then he heard his own name, mentioned briefly, followed by words about strength and guidance. And then Dundee prayed for peace, a deep, heartfelt plea that seemed to carry the weight of the world. Ali, a man known for his booming confidence and public declarations, felt an unexpected jolt. He stood there, frozen, watching his mentor, a man he thought he knew, reveal a profound humility, a hidden burden of devotion that was utterly private. Dundee's face, usually composed, now showed a quiet struggle, a deep well of faith. This was not the coach who shouted instructions in the ring. This was a man laid bare, vulnerable, yet incredibly strong in his quiet conviction. A profound shift stirred within Ali. An unexpected sense of awe washed over him, a deep, new respect for the man who had always been there, always steady. He realized then that the depth of Dundee's character went far beyond the boxing ring. The full impact of this realization, this quiet, powerful moment, was yet to unfold. A champion's strength often comes from unseen prayers. Ali found himself, almost instinctively, sinking to his knees outside the window. He wasn't praying, not in that moment, but he was in silent contemplation, his usual bravado momentarily forgotten. What truth had he just stumbled upon? Before we continue, subscribe to the channel and tell us where you are watching from in the comments. The Miami of the 1960s was a city of stark contrasts, a vibrant place buzzing with energy, yet deeply divided. Palm trees swayed against a backdrop of gleaming new hotels, alongside older, more neglected neighborhoods. It was a place where flashy cars cruised down Ocean Drive, and the music of Latin America blended with American jazz. But beneath the surface, strict segregation kept communities apart, a silent rule that shaped daily life for many. Black residents lived in Overtown and Liberty City, while white residents occupied other areas. Despite the division, there was a palpable sense of ambition and change in the air, a city trying to find its identity, much like the young boxer who would soon call it home. This was the landscape where both Muhammad Ali and Angelo Dundee operated, each in their own way, navigating its complexities. Before he was Muhammad Ali, he was Cassius Clay, a young man from Louisville, Kentucky. His early life was marked by a bicycle theft that sparked his boxing journey, leading him to the local police officer and boxing coach, Joe Martin. From that moment, a fire was lit. Clay's amateur career was stellar, culminating in an Olympic gold medal in 1960. He burst onto the professional scene with a personality as potent as his punches. He was brash, charismatic, and unafraid to tell the world exactly how great he was. His poetic pronouncements, predictions of rounds, and confident swagger captivated audiences and infuriated opponents. Cassius Clay's world was a whirlwind of public adoration, constant challenges, and a self-belief that seemed to defy gravity. He was quickly becoming a global phenomenon, an entertainer as much as an athlete, always in the spotlight, always demanding attention. On the other side of the ring, literally and figuratively, was Angelo Dundee. Hailing from Philadelphia, Dundee was a seasoned boxing trainer, a quiet strategist who preferred to work behind the scenes. He wasn't about flash or self-promotion. His reputation was built on his calm demeanor, his sharp tactical mind, and an almost uncanny ability to understand his fighters. Dundee could spot a weakness, devise a plan, and instill confidence with a few well-chosen words. His world was one of dedication, long hours in the gym, and an unwavering loyalty to the men he trained. He often worked in the shadow of his champions, content to let them bask in the glory, while he focused on the craft, the science, and the demanding art of boxing. He was the steady hand, the quiet force that guided explosive talent. Their paths crossed in Miami, a city that became a hub for boxing in the 60s. Clay, having turned professional, was looking for a trainer who could match his ambition and refine his raw talent. Dundee, always on the lookout for promising fighters, saw something special in the young Kentuckian. Their initial professional relationship began with a stark contrast in personalities. Clay, the flamboyant showman, was a whirlwind of energy and ego. Dundee, the steady-grounded mentor, was the calm at the center of Clay's storm. Clay loved the limelight, the crowds, the attention. Dundee loved the work, the strategy, the quiet satisfaction of seeing a fighter improve. While their partnership quickly proved successful, there were subtle tensions from the start. Clay's desire for the spotlight sometimes clashed with Dundee's focus on the meticulous craft of boxing. There were early moments where Clay's booming ego brushed against Dundee's quiet authority. Clay wanted to dominate every conversation, every training session, while Dundee patiently steered him back to fundamentals. These were not major conflicts, but small indications of the deeper understanding that would need to develop between the brash young fighter and his unflappable coach. It set the stage for a relationship that would become one of boxing's most enduring, built on a foundation that was still being poured. The relationship between Ali and Dundee was never static. It was always evolving, deepening beyond the simple professional connection of fighter and trainer. Over the years, their bond was tested and strengthened. revealing layers of trust and resilience that went beyond the ropes of the boxing ring. There were moments, especially in Ali's early career, where his natural arrogance, fueled by a string of easy victories, threatened to overshadow the disciplined work Dundee tried to instill. Ali was a force of nature, and sometimes even Dundee had to navigate his fighter's boundless confidence. One classic example came during a tough fight, maybe against Henry Cooper or Sonny Liston. Ali, then Cassius Clay, was getting hit hard, perhaps even knocked down. The crowd was roaring, the energy in the arena was frantic, and Ali was clearly struggling, his usual bravado momentarily shaken. In the corner, amidst the chaos, Dundee's voice was the only calm thing. He didn't yell, didn't panic. He just gave simple, clear instructions. Move your head, keep your left up, stick and move. He might have even done something simple like cutting Ali's glove a little to buy a few extra seconds. A classic Dundee move. Ali went back out and, following Dundee's calm, precise advice, turned the fight around, eventually winning. Afterward, in the press conferences, Ali would take all the public credit, as was his style, proclaiming his own genius. Dundee would just stand quietly in the background, a small, knowing smile on his face, content with the victory and the knowledge of his crucial role. He never sought the spotlight, letting Ali have his moment. These weren't isolated incidents. Dundee constantly put Ali's career and well-being above his own, often without seeking any recognition. While Ali was out celebrating a win, soaking up the adulation, Dundee might be back in the hotel room, meticulously reviewing fight tapes, devising strategies for the next opponent. He'd stay up late, poring over details, while Ali, exhausted from training or reveling in his fame, slept soundly. When Ali faced public controversies, especially during his conversion to Islam and his refusal to be drafted, Dundee was often the quiet buffer, dealing with the media, managing the fallout, and protecting Ali from the worst of the political and social backlash. He handled the behind-the-scenes chaos, so Ali could focus on being Ali, the fighter, the showman, the icon. Dundee's tactical genius and emotional support were vital to Ali's success, yet they were largely uncredited by the outside world. People saw Ali's dazzling speed, his powerful punches, his quick wit. They didn't always see the hours Dundee spent studying opponents, identifying weaknesses, or the quiet words of encouragement he offered when Ali felt the immense pressure of living up to his own legend. There were times when Ali, caught up in his own larger-than-life persona, might have overlooked the depth of his coach's dedication. His boastful moments, while entertaining, often centered entirely on himself, rarely acknowledging the quiet architect of his ring strategies. The bond between them was strong, almost familial, but it also meant that Dundee carried a quiet burden. He bore the weight of responsibility for Ali's physical safety and professional success, often absorbing Ali's frustrations and public backlash silently. It was an effort that was often unacknowledged by the world, and sometimes even by the very man he was dedicating his life to. Dundee was the foundation, the unwavering constant, while Ali was the magnificent, ever-changing edifice built upon it. This quiet, unheralded effort formed the true bedrock of their partnership, making Dundee much more than just a coach. He was a silent guardian. The pressures on Ali were growing, and with them, the demands on Dundee. Ali's public profile exploded not just as a boxer, but as a cultural figure. He was outspoken about his Muslim faith, and his stance on the Vietnam War threw him into the eye of a political storm. This wasn't just about boxing anymore. It was about civil rights, religious freedom, and global politics. The atmosphere around him became intensely charged. Every move, Every word was scrutinized by the media, cheered by supporters, and condemned by critics. This constant public glare was a heavy weight, and it affected everyone close to him, especially Dundee. Training camps became grueling, not just physically, but mentally. Ali had to maintain his undefeated record, uphold his image as the greatest, and navigate a world increasingly polarized by his views. The physical toll of preparing for world-class opponents was immense, but the psychological burden of being Muhammad Ali, the icon, was perhaps even heavier. Every punch, every skip of the rope, every roadwork session was performed under the shadow of immense expectation and constant scrutiny. Dundee had to manage all of this, keeping Ali focused on the fight when the entire world seemed to be pulling him in a million different directions. In this whirlwind, Dundee became Ali's constant steady anchor. He was the calm in the center of Ali's personal and public hurricane. Dundee had to manage Ali's moods, which could swing from playful charm to fierce defiance. He shielded Ali from the endless distractions, the hangers-on, the reporters, the political activists, all vying for a piece of the champion. Dundee absorbed Ali's frustrations, his anxieties, and the public backlash, often silently. He was the buffer, the filter, the quiet shield that allowed Ali to remain Ali, the fighter. He didn't just train Ali's body, he helped protect Ali's mind, keeping it sharp and directed toward the ring. There were subtle tensions, of course. Ali's larger-than-life persona and the sheer demands of his fame sometimes created friction with Dundee's grounded, pragmatic approach. Ali might make a spontaneous, attention-grabbing statement to the press, something that would send headlines spiraling and force Dundee to swiftly adapt strategy or manage the fallout. Ali's public pronouncements, while electrifying to his fans, often created complications that Dundee had to untangle behind the scenes. He was constantly navigating the consequences of Ali's spontaneous genius, always finding a way to make it work, to keep the ship steady. The heavy, humid Miami air seemed to amplify the psychological weight on them both. The constant buzz of reporters and hangers-on around the training camp was relentless. Even in the quiet moments, the pressure was palpable, a silent hum beneath the surface of their interactions. Dundee always maintained his composure, his quiet authority a stark contrast to Ali's flamboyant energy. He understood that his role was not to compete with Ali's star power, but to support it, to enable it. He was the quiet strength behind the loud spectacle, the unseen architect of the champion's success. This was his burden, his dedication, and his silent sacrifice, all of which Ali, perhaps, had not fully seen until now. The evening air in Miami was thick and warm, a typical Florida night. Ali, usually surrounded by an entourage, found himself alone, walking a little distance behind Dundee. It was an unusual decision for Ali, who rarely did anything without a crowd. But something had been stirring in him, a quiet curiosity about the man who was always there, always steady, yet never seemed to seek the spotlight. It wasn't suspicion that drove him, but a burgeoning, unspoken need to understand the quiet strength he sensed in his coach. Ali, for all his bravado, was a deeply observant man, and he knew there was more to Angelo Dundee than met the eye. He wanted to see what that more was, away from the roar of the crowd and the glare of the cameras. This was a rare moment of introspection for Ali, a quiet pause from the relentless demands of being the greatest. He watched Dundee turn onto a modest street, the kind of place where families lived, where life happened away from the flash and dazzle of celebrity. As Dundee unlocked his front door, Ali slipped into the shadows of a large mango tree across the street, its leaves rustling softly in the breeze. He wasn't sure what he expected to see. Maybe Dundee would just sit down, tired, and watch TV. Maybe he'd make a phone call, talk about the next fight. But what Ali saw next was something entirely different. Through a gap in the curtains, Ali saw Angelo Dundee, the man who calmly navigated Ali's storms, the man who always had a plan, kneel down in his living room. Dundee wasn't kneeling to pick something up or to rest. He was kneeling in prayer. There was no grandiosity, no performance. It was a private moment, raw and real. Ali could make out the soft murmur of Dundee's voice. Not loud, but filled with a deep, quiet intensity. He wasn't praying for victory in the ring, or for fame, or for money. Ali strained to listen, catching fragments. He heard Dundee praying for his family, for their health and safety. He heard him pray for his fighters, for their well-being, for their futures, not just their wins. And then Ali heard him pray for peace, for understanding in a world that often seemed to lack it. This wasn't just a religious act. It was a profound display of humility, vulnerability, and deep personal faith. Dundee's prayers were not for himself, but for the well-being of others, revealing a selfless core Ali hadn't fully perceived. It was a side of Dundee that Ali, for all their years together, had never witnessed. This private act shattered Ali's existing perception of Dundee. He saw not just a coach, but a man of immense spiritual depth, carrying burdens and offering devotion in solitude. The image of the invincible Ali, kneeling silently outside, not in prayer himself, but in silent observation, signified a dramatic internal shift. His usual bravado, his loud confidence, all of it was momentarily forgotten, replaced by a quiet awe. This observation became a profound lesson for Ali. It illuminated the quiet strength and unwavering character that underpinned Dundee's entire being and their relationship. It wasn't about the tactical brilliance in the corner or the calm advice between rounds. It was about something deeper, something fundamental to Dundee's soul. It was a moment of deep, personal truth for Ali, revealing the true nature of his mentor, and by extension, the deeper meaning of greatness beyond the ring itself. It was about the unseen prayers, the quiet dedication, the selflessness that truly defined a man. The immediate aftermath of that night didn't bring any dramatic public declarations from Ali. His public persona, the quick wit, the bold predictions, remained largely intact. But something fundamental had shifted within him. In the quiet moments, in the way he looked at Dundee, there was a newfound depth, a respect that went beyond professional admiration. It was a silent acknowledgement of the man, not just the coach. Their interactions subtly changed. Ali still challenged Dundee, still played his games, but there was an underlying current of understanding. He listened more intently to Dundee's advice, not just about boxing technique, but sometimes about life. He saw the quiet strength that had always been there, now illuminated by that glimpse into Dundee's private world. It was as if a missing piece of the puzzle had clicked into place, showing Ali the full picture of the man who stood by him. This moment contributed significantly to Ali's own personal and spiritual development. He was already a man of faith, but seeing Dundee's humble, selfless devotion deepened his understanding of what true humility meant. It wasn't about public acts of piety, but about the quiet, consistent dedication to values, to family, to others. It taught Ali that greatness wasn't solely defined by the roar of the crowd or the flash of the cameras. It was also found in the unseen prayers, the quiet burdens carried for others, the unwavering commitment to something larger than oneself. It wasn't just about winning fights. It was about the character one showed, both inside and outside the ring. Dundee's quiet strength and unwavering dedication became an even more crucial bedrock for Ali, especially during the toughest periods of his career. When Ali refused induction into the military and was stripped of his title, facing public scorn and a forced hiatus from boxing, many turned their backs on him. But Angelo Dundee remained. He didn't just stay as a coach, he stayed as a loyal friend, a steadfast presence in a world that had suddenly become hostile. He believed in Ali, not just as a fighter, but as a man. That loyalty, that quiet support spoke volumes. It was the embodiment of the selflessness Ali had witnessed that night outside Dundee's home. The consequence, promised at the beginning, the profound impact on Ali's soul, was precisely this. It was the realization that true greatness extended beyond the ring, beyond the showmanship, beyond the titles. It was in the quiet, selfless dedication embodied by individuals like Angelo Dundee. This realization cemented their bond into something far deeper than just fighter and coach. They became family, bound by shared experiences, mutual respect, and a profound unspoken understanding. Looking back, Ali often spoke of Dundee with immense affection, a warmth that transcended their professional relationship. He understood that Dundee had been more than a trainer. He had been a mentor, a confessor, a rock. Ali realized that the true measure of a man, even a champion, lies not just in public victories, in the dazzling displays of skill and confidence, but in the private virtues, the quiet strength, and the unseen acts of devotion exemplified by individuals like Angelo Dundee. The lasting lesson was about humility, faith, and the profound influence of a mentor's unseen character. It taught Ali, and by extension, all who heard his story, to look beyond the surface, to appreciate the hidden depths of those around us, and to understand that true strength often resides in the quietest, most selfless corners of the human spirit. It was a lesson that shaped the champion, both inside and outside the ring, forever.